and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Drew and Lou and Oscar. Good to have you guys. In this podcast, we talk about how Taoist thought, Taoist writings, Taoist spirituality, the Taoist approach relates to our recovery. We're all in 12-step recovery in some form, or Al-Anon, which I feel that's 12-step recovery as well. And not only to our recovery and our ideas of the higher power, but also in the rest of our lives. That's the real gift. The real gift is the way that I surrender to alcohol is the same way that I surrender to the rest of my life and stop this fighting of anything and anyone, even our addiction, even for me, even alcohol. I stopped fighting the whole deal. Our story today, we're continuing in Thomas Merton's interpretation of the Chuang Tzu. Last week we talked about the joy of fishes and how Chuang Tzu could see the joy of the fishes because he was walking the same river and was experiencing his own joy. So now we're going to talk about perfect joy. I don't know what this story has. I have not read it beforehand. It's long, though. We'll break it up in at least a couple of weeks, if not more. Before we get into the story, though, two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about a resource at buddyc.org and a synchronistic moment. We realize that, or I do, that I'm going to date myself right now. Mr. Magooing my way through life. I don't know what's in front. Things happen and fall into place that I never see, never know that happen. And sometimes I see them. And so that's those synchronistic moments that we like to talk about and show gratitude for those. Drew, you have one for us today, sir?
I do. A couple days ago, I was doing a little exercise from this creative writing book that I got. That's just one of my hobbies is doing creative writing. And I got this little workbook to help me out with a new book that I'm working on. And the exercise is about writing about characters who don't share your traits. And the exercise asked you to write down the names of the 7 people who you trust the most. So I thought about it and I wrote down the 7 people who I trust the most, some of whom I don't see or hear from that much, but I know that if I were to call them, they'd drop everything and help me out if I needed it. I wrote down my friend William, who I haven't really heard from in a little while. And within 5 minutes of me writing his name down, he texted me just to say hi. And I looked, and that was the first text that either of us had sent to each other in over 3 months. Within 5 minutes of me writing his name down as one of the people who I trust most in my life, he texted me. And I told him that. He thought it was really cool, and he told his wife, and she thought that was really sweet. But yeah, definitely I told my wife, and basically we all agreed that's the universe working in some strange way.
I wonder sometimes why those things are important for us to see, because I really feel like I'm of value when I experience those. Maybe it's just the way life is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I try to add extra when things like that happen. Things way beyond what coincidences would provide.
Yeah, if it was one of those things where he and I text every day and he had sent me a text 5 minutes after I wrote his name down, that wouldn't have really struck me. But I actually went I went back and looked, how long has it been since either of us had sent a text to each other, and it was early October.
Yeah, it's like a sponsee of mine. I was questioning whether we should part ways, but I did not. I was really too chicken shit to do it. And just quite honestly, I wouldn't. And I was sitting there thinking about it, and I don't believe I'd heard from him that day. And I was thinking, yeah, I think we need to part ways. But I don't know how. I don't want to. And while I'm in that thought, my phone beeps, and it's him. And he says, I think maybe I should find another sponsor. And my response immediately was, sounds good. But it happened. It was one of those things where, man, that's exactly what I needed. But yeah, it's that's life. And I think if we're open, we'll continue to see those things, Drew. So thank you. The resource I want to talk about before we read. Oh, Oscar, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I had to think about a podcast I listened to, which is called the Telepathy Tapes. It's about telepathy between people who can't communicate in a normal as we communicate. So people on the spectrum or who have syndromes in any way they are not able to speak and so on. And during investigation, it became clearer and clearer that they communicate on a completely other level within the mind, between minds. And I think the example of Drew is the same. And I have so many times that these things happen that you think about somebody and bloop, there they are, or you bump into them. So there is definitely something else going on than our
Oscar,
little brain.
So is it that we think about it and it happens, or it's going to happen and the thought comes to prepare us, maybe? See, that's too much thinking.
Yeah, that's thinking in a logical
yeah.
occurrence of things.
I'm so special. That happens for me. No, I don't.
Oh no, there is something else.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm looking at the podcast now, the TELEPATHY tapes. I think I'm going to give a listen to that. Thank you. So that's all it talks about, or the different ways that happens and examples and that kind of a thing?
Yeah, it's examples and investigation, and it's going deeper and deeper into, it starts with a kind of coincidence. Oh, wow. And then they going to investigate it and get deeper, and it really gets on levels that you think, oh my God. And my wife listened to this, and she was talking about it's some kind of miracle. But I thought, yeah, actually, it happens all the time, I think, between everybody, but we don't notice it because we are so busy thinking.
We're so far stuck up our own agendas.
Yeah, very narrowed. Very narrowed.
And we're not open to these things. I think that's why a lot of spirituality is about opening our heart.
Yeah.
Being open to others' ideas. Just being open.
In Chinese, the mind and the heart is one thing. So the mind includes the heart. So the heart is part of the mind, or it's the middle of the mind. So opening our hearts would be beautiful.
Yes. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, guys. The resource before we get to our story, the resource today I want to talk about is just the recovery resources page at buddyc.org. This page has a lot of different resources, great for if you want to put a sponsee into a whole list of different resources they can use, or if you need them for yourself, just go to buddyc.org and hit the recovery resources tab. Now, I'm just going to go through this really quick. The list, there's 30 tools to stay sober during the holidays and before, during, and after the holidays. And I'm not going to go through these, but these are not mine. These came from the Fourth Dimensioners nightly meeting the first year of the pandemic. And so some of these aren't really something I would do, but a lot of them are. So just take that with a grain of salt. Sign up for transitions emails, list of podcasts, AA meeting guide, sober meditations, all different online meetings, and other resources, reading materials, and then our shared Google calendars are there too. So lots of stuff there, guys, that I hope you can put to use. No agenda behind that, no emails needed, none of those things. Okay, our story for today, Perfect Joy. Drew, you going to read for us, sir, I believe?
Yeah, I'm going to read the first page and then the first paragraph of the second page, since this is a really long one.
Okay.
Perfect joy. Is there to be found on earth a fullness of joy, or is there no such thing? Is there some way to make life fully worth living, or is this impossible? If there is such a way, how do you go about finding it? What should you try to do? What should you seek to avoid? What should be the goal in which your activity comes to rest? What should you accept? What should you refuse to accept? What should you love? What should you hate? What the world values is money, reputation, long life, achievement. What it counts as joy is health and comfort of body, good food, fine clothes, beautiful things to look at, pleasant music to listen to. What it condemns is lack of money, a low social rank, a reputation for being no good, and an early death. What it considers misfortune is bodily discomfort and labor, no chance to get your fill of good food, not having good clothes to wear, having no way to amuse or delight the eye, no pleasant music to listen to. If people find that they are deprived of these things, they go into a panic or fall into despair. They are so concerned for their life that their anxiety makes life unbearable, even when they have the things they think they want. Their very concern for enjoyment makes them unhappy. The rich make life intolerable, driving themselves in order to get more and more money which they cannot really use. In so doing, they are alienated from themselves and exhaust themselves in their own service as though they were slaves of others. The ambitious run day and night in pursuit of honors, constantly in anguish about the success of their plans, dreading the miscalculation that may wreck everything. Thus they are alienated from themselves, exhausting their real life in service of the shadow created by their insatiable hope.
Thank you, Drew. I hope we can get past this. That was depressing. I hope we can get on to the good stuff.
It kind of just off the top of my head, it reminds me of like the start of the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism. You have to be aware of the suffering.
Yeah.
And the Four Noble Truths, it gets better, but you got to start out with awareness of suffering. I think that's what this is.
The awareness of suffering and the source, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's asking all the questions. How do we find it? What do we do? What do we not do? What do we accept? What do we not accept? What should we love? What should we hate? All those things. Then after it goes through the questions, it states what the world values. Of course, money, reputation, achievement, and what counts as joy. Not what is joy, but what counts as joy is health, comfort of body. And we could think a lot of times you'll hear that. I think the way they're talking about this, it's peace and joy, it's contentment. Lou, you got something for us?
It's just to the side, but what struck me right away was that this was written in the 4th century. This wasn't written last week, but it could apply to this week.
I had that same thought.
Yeah.
Doesn't change, does it? The struggle, so to speak, is always the same. It's not a different, I'll just say struggle. It's not a different struggle now than it was then to surrender, let's say, or to lay down our searches in the wrong direction, which is what this is, I think, framing for us. It's all the same. And it's interesting what the world counts for joy, and then what the world condemns. Doesn't say that this is actually it, but this is how the world sees it. Low rank, social rank, low reputation, and early death. And then what the world considers misfortune. It's interesting here they talk about food, good food in each of these too. Not getting good food, having good food, not getting good food is misfortune. If I remember correctly, I didn't look this up, but if I recall correctly, Solomon said that there were two things that brought satisfaction in life. Now, the stories of Solomon are that he was so wealthy that he piled silver up outside of the city and declared it worthless because he had so much gold. He had like, I don't know, 700 concubines or something, some ungodly number. He had everything, right, that a man would want. All this stuff. And he said there's two things that bring satisfaction. One, enjoying your meat and drink. In other words, enjoying the food that you have. And the second's enjoying your work. He had found that those two things were what brought satisfaction in life, not all that other stuff. And the world would take a different view. So the good food reminded me of that quote. Food and clothes and music, ways to amuse ourselves, delight the eye. And then these couple of sentences here at the bottom, near the bottom of the page, they are so concerned for their life that their anxiety makes life unbearable, even when they have the things they think they want. Their very concern for enjoyment makes them unhappy. Their very concern for enjoyment makes them unhappy.
And Buddy, the list of those things in the earlier part of the paragraph, the good food, the good clothes, the things that delight the eye, the pleasant music, those remind me of the Tao Te Ching verse about the five senses. The flavors numb the taste, sounds deafen the ear, those sorts of things. The world considers it misfortune to not have those things that end up dulling the senses.
I think that's verse 56. Those who know don't talk, those who talk don't know. Close your mouth, block off your senses, blunt the sharpness, untie the knots, soften the glare, settle your dust. This is the primal identity. To be like the Tao, it can't be approached or withdrawn from, benefited or harmed, honored or brought into disgrace. It gives itself up continually. That is why it endures. Lou?
A couple of thoughts on that, buddy. One was Solomon actually, his number one and number two things were, as you said, but he also tried liquor. He tried lust. And ultimately, Solomon, too, thought those all led nowhere. And he turned his mind to spiritual things. The other thing is that most of these, I don't know if all of them, but most of these seem to be external. These are things outside of us.
Oh, yes.
That he's taught.
Yeah. Thank you, Lou. I had not picked up on that. They are, aren't they? Then it's interesting how it goes from that to the actual meat of this section, I think. Their inward concern made life unbearable. So it's another example of us looking outward for what we already have within. We're just not aware of. Then the last little paragraph, the rich make life intolerable, driving themselves in order to get more and more that they can't use. In so doing, are alienated from themselves. They're not alienated. They may be alienated from others, but they're alienated from themselves and exhaust themselves in their own service as though they were slaves of others. That reminds me of the real freedom we're looking for is freedom from ourselves, from our ego, from our fear, all of our different fears. And that's the ego plays into that, and our resentments and our dishonesty and selfishness all play into that. We're slaves to ourselves.
And
And
buddy,
it doesn't stop. Go ahead, Drew.
Gonna say that paragraph to me translates really easily into addiction. You can say that the addict makes life intolerable, driving themselves in order to get more and more of their substance of choice, which they cannot really use. In so doing, they are alienated from themselves and exhaust themselves in their own service as though they were slaves of their addiction.
Thank you.
I know that I was definitely alienated from myself and when I was in my addiction, in my active addiction.
Let's read the next little section. I'll just read it and then we'll talk about it. The birth of a man is the birth of his sorrow. The longer he lives, the more stupid he becomes, because his anxiety to avoid the unavoidable, to avoid unavoidable death, becomes more and more acute. What bitterness! He lives for what is always out of reach. His thirst for survival in the future makes him incapable of living in the present. Wow. Wow. Is that not it? Thirst for survival in the future makes him incapable of living in the present. That's one of the gifts of sobriety, is that we realize that all of our trying to firm up the future, trying to hedge against the future, deprives us of the moment. Is that what recovery does, or learning to live compassionately? It brings me back to the present moment. That's why intensive work with other alcoholics works when other things fail, is because I'm brought back to the present. I'm not stuck in just thinking of the future. I'm not worrying about something upcoming, or I'm not regretting the past. I'm in the moment, because the moment's the only time there is. Like you said, Oscar, I've quoted this a lot. We're already in the present. We just lose sight of that, right? Yes. That's good.
Yeah, I think that has been a big key to recovery for me, is recognizing that I was always I was very worried about feeling safe and secure in the future, but I can feel safe and secure right now. You know, that feeling of safety and security that I want to feel, I can feel it in the present moment.
You can't feel it in the future, no matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You can have, let's say you have a fear of financial insecurity, it's one of mine. I can say, oh, I've got X number of dollars in the bank, or I own this that's free and clear. I can look at net worth, that kind of thing. But I've caught myself doing that. That's not living free of fear. Doesn't mean I don't need to have things. It's just what importance do I place on those things? Is my importance misplaced? Am I using that as security rather than using gratitude for security? Gratitude always works because I can look back and see how things have worked out. Why do I not think they'll work out now? Oscar?
Yeah. For me, when I read this, the verse is really about a misidentification I make. And when I relate this to recovery, I remember the third step where I take a decision to hand over my life and my will to a greater power or a higher power. And that means that decision means for me, okay, I decide not for Oscar to be the driver anymore. And Oscar, the identification with Oscar is the identification with the body. And when I think I'm a body, I'm gonna need good food and clothing, and I'm very afraid of death, and I'm very afraid of not being good enough, and I need appreciation, and I need love in a kind of tricky way. You give me some love, and I give you some back, and like a trade system. So it's really the ego thought system where Oscar works in. And then somewhere in my mind, there is the possibility to decide whether, okay, Oscar is going to drive the bus, or God is going to drive the bus, or God, or a higher power, or the Tao, or consciousness. And when I go there, I can only be in the present, because that's a bus that only drives in the present moment and not somewhere else. So it is actually the same as the present moment. The present moment is not a moment in time, but it's timeless, unchangeable, beautiful, not a thing, but for the sake of conversation, a thing through which all time moves. So when I choose this state of mind, time moves through me instead of me moving through time and trying to make the day good or bad or save the day or all these things I need to do, I don't have to do anymore. And then there's this peace and things unfold from themselves. I don't have to. Oscar doesn't have to be in here. And I have a normal job, I have a family, I have a bank account, I have a house. All these things still are the same, but it's not. I'm not concerned about it anymore. I don't have to. I don't have to worry about it.
Yes. Thank you, Oscar. Really, it's the ever-present moment. That's
Yes.
how I've come to. And for me, there's two analogies that I really like. The one for what you're talking about, Oscar, is the wave. It's like a continual wave that you're riding that never hits the shore. It is continually going all the time. And that's the wave of the ever present moment. That's how I see it. You're part of the whole. Or the wave itself, you could think of it that way, ever how you want to think of it. The point is that it's always there. It's always moving. It's beyond my control. And I am not only riding that wave, I am part of that wave, which is no different than the entire ocean. Now it moves to a different group of people. Okay, what about the self-sacrificing officials and scholars? They're honored by the world because they're good, upright, self-sacrificing men. Yet, their good character does not preserve them from unhappiness, nor even from ruin, disgrace, and death. Notice still judging by these externals as to what is to make someone happy or have joy or not. I wonder in that case if their goodness, in quotes, is really so good after all. Is it perhaps a source of unhappiness? Suppose you admit they are happy, but is it a happy thing to have a character and a career that lead to one's own eventual destruction? On the other hand, can you call them unhappy if, in sacrificing themselves, they save the lives and fortunes of others? I'm going to comment on that. At first, I thought I saw where he was going, but that last little paragraph tripped me a little. So I'm just going to keep reading. Take the case of the minister who consciously and uprightly opposes an unjust decision of his king. Some say, tell the truth, and if the king will not listen, let him do what he likes. You have no further obligation. On the other hand, is Zhu Shu, he's the minister, okay? The minister continued to resist the unjust policy of his sovereign. He was consequently destroyed. But if he had not stood up for what he believed to be right, his name would not be held in honor. So there is the question. Shall the course he took be called good if at the same time it was fatal to him? I cannot tell if what the world considers happiness is happiness or not. All I know is that when I consider the way they go about attaining it, I see them carried away headlong, grim and obsessed, in the general onrush of the human herd, unable to stop themselves or to change their direction, all while they claim to be just on the point of attaining happiness. Almost there. If I had blank, that would make me happy. If I had this, if I had that. For my part, I cannot accept their standards, whether of happiness or unhappiness. I ask myself if after all their concept of happiness has any meaning whatsoever. It's interesting how Chuang Tzu, instead of judging it to be right or wrong, which is where you think he's heading, he gives all these examples and different things. He says, I cannot tell if what the world considers happiness is happiness or not. I can't tell, but I can observe their experience and I can observe my own experience. For my part, I cannot accept their standards, whether happiness or unhappiness. I ask myself if after all their concept of happiness has any meaning whatsoever. My opinion is that you never find happiness until you stop looking for it. Wow. My greatest happiness consists precisely in doing nothing whatever that is calculated to obtain happiness. And this, in the minds of most people, is the worst possible course. I'm going to reread that. My opinion is that you never find happiness until you stop looking for it. My greatest happiness consists precisely in doing nothing whatever that is calculated to obtain happiness, and this, in the minds of most people, is the worst possible course. I will hold to the saying that perfect joy is to be without joy. Perfect praise is to be without praise. If you ask what ought to be done and what ought not to be done on earth in order to produce happiness, I answer that these questions do not have an answer. There is no way of determining such things. Yet, at the same time, if I see striving for happiness, the right and the wrong at once become apparent all by themselves. If I cease striving, the right and wrong at once become apparent. I stop fighting anything and anyone, even alcohol. By this time, sanity had returned. You didn't work for it, it returned. Contentment and well-being at once become possible the moment you cease to act with them in view, and if you practice non-doing wu wei, you will have both happiness and well-being. We're going to finish this up, guys. Here is how I sum it up. Heaven does nothing. Its non-doing is its serenity. Earth does nothing. Its non-doing is its rest. From the union of these two non-doings, all actions proceed, all things are made. How vast, how invisible this coming to be. All things come from nowhere. How vast, how invisible. No way to explain it. All beings in their perfection are born of non-doing. Hence, it is said, heaven and earth do nothing, yet there is nothing they do not do. Where is the man who can attain to this non-doing? We talk about this quite often. Stopping to strive does not mean that you do nothing. He actually covers this in the little one-sentence paragraph. If I cease striving for happiness, the right and wrong at once become apparent, all by themselves. In other words, if I stop fighting, the next right action shows itself. Because as long as I'm fighting, I can't see the next right action. This is just talking about doing nothing from your fear base. Drew?
Yeah, I'm going to quote you back at you, paraphrase you
I
back
hate it.
at
I hate
you.
it when that happens.
No, what I thought about with these couple of paragraphs, the one you just read and the one above it, about when people want counsel on what do I need to do or not do in order to be happy, or when I'm asking myself that question, what do I need? What things do I need, or what things do I need to avoid? What actions do I need to take? What actions do I not need to take? If I drop all of that, if I drop all those questions, if I drop all that seeking, the only thing left is for me to live in love, basically. If my mind is clear, then that's the only way that I have to live, is in love of everything. And my actions come from that, my words come from that, my non-doing comes from that. And when everything I do, everything I don't do, everything I say, everything I think comes from that just quiet, present place of love, then I'm happy. I know I'm happy because I've stopped seeking it. I'm coming from that place of pure goodness, and not the goodness that you referred to earlier, where people are trying to be good or they're sacrificing themselves to be good. The martyr, the codependent, the enabler. When I'm coming from a place of love, that's when I am truly happy. And that's the one time when I'm not seeking happiness.
Thank you, Drew. Peace and joy are fruit of the Spirit. In other words, they're fruit that if you have an apple tree, let's say, you can't make that tree produce fruit. You can just create the environment that's conducive to the tree producing fruit. So you just do the things, provide the water, provide the nutrition, cut out maybe trees around it that may be sheltering it from the sun. All the things you would do to make an environment conducive to the tree producing fruit. I think there's some similarities there with what we're talking about. I think, was it Chuck C that said his book, A New Pair of Glasses? We have a new pair of glasses now. We see the world differently. Well, I thought everybody was after me. No, all that was fear. They're not really after me. They're not really fighting me. I was taking all these things personally. Now this new pair of glasses I have says, oh, they would have pulled out in front of any car that was there at that moment. They didn't pull out in front of you. All the ways we start seeing things a little differently. And so we start with our peace and joy, where we start saying, oh, it's not about attaining the next thing. Those things aren't making me happy. I need to look within for those things. And we start seeing that through compassionate living. I want to read a quote. I've read this, it's been a while, I think. This is from a book by V.C. Kitchen entitled I Was a Pagan. It's an interesting book. I think it was published in the early 30s, mid 30s, maybe 35. But he got sober through what's the groups that Bill went to before AA? I forgot the name of they met.
Oxford groups.
Oxford groups, thank you. He got sober in Oxford groups. He was in a businessman's group in the Oxford group with Bill. So he had to have influenced Bill. I would imagine Bill read his book even, I would think. This is a quote from page 28 in his V.C. Kitchen's book, I Was a Pagan. These ambitions, hypocrisies, and vices were not drained out when I transferred my belief in one plan or philosophy of life to another. They were not drained out by making New Year's resolutions, and they were not disposed of by going to psychoanalysts. Remember, 1930s. He's a wealthy guy, retired from the insurance business, kind of to frame it a little. Was not disposed of by going to psychoanalysts or by going to church. They were drained out. Check this out. They were drained out by stopping the self-effort to get rid of them, by letting God take hold to do the job, and by putting God first in life. I had put God first in theory, yet still continued to mean well and do badly. That was because I was still trying to run my own life. I had not put him first in living, but had kept my self-love uppermost and had built my scheme of things quite upside down. When I turned things around, however, and put God at the head of the list, when I ceased struggling to pull myself up and stepped out of the way so that his light could shine down to me, when I let him show me how to use the individuality he had given me to accomplish for myself, for humanity, and for him the things he wanted me to accomplish, then for the first time in 40 years, things of consequence began to happen in my life. Wow. I stepped out of the way, stopped the self-effort. And you can replace love there for God if God is love. I put love at the head of the list. How can I help you? Instead of helping you, just thinking about me. How can I be a help to you right now? There's never been a situation that I've done that I have not benefited. Never. First, I thought people would take advantage of me. The first time that happened, I was doing a business deal and I asked the question. We just negotiated and I heard this question come out of my mouth. I'm like, oh shit, what did I just say? I heard myself say, is there anything else I can do for you today? And my thought was, oh shit, I've already got what I need out of these people. I just gave them an open-ended question. You never give an open-ended question. It was against all the things I was ever taught in business. Oh my God, they're going to take advantage of me. Yeah, man, I was already in the poorhouse in 5 seconds. I was destroyed. They said, no, we're good. Thank you very much. I was like, oh, okay. So I learned that vulnerability, and there's an element of vulnerability in this. That vulnerability is a form of compassion, too. That I'm not defending, protecting, hedging all the time. Sometimes that takes the form of admitting when I am wrong or admitting when I don't know instead of making something up that sounds good. What a great story. Contentment and well-being at once become possible the moment we cease to act with them in view. If you practice non-doing, you will have both happiness and well-being. And for me, how do I practice non-doing? I get to focus off of myself. If I want to jump in and fix the thing, maybe I can stop and pause for a second and ask, instead of fixing this, how can I look at this differently? How can I be a help to the other people involved? I go to a holiday meal and my relatives are drinking. Instead of sitting there and fixating on the drink, if it's too much, I can leave, of course. Maybe I say, how can I be of help? I get up and start cleaning up the dishes or go play with the children or do something constructive instead of sitting there just wallowing in my own crap. Do y'all wallow over in the Netherlands, Oscar?
I don't know exactly what it means, but I can imagine. I can imagine we do. Yeah.
Imagine a hog in a muddy pen, just wallowing around like it's bubble bath.
Yeah,
That's it.
We handle it. We handle it the same way. Yeah, waddling. I will remember that one.
Yeah, that's the way we wallowing. WALLOWING. That's good.
Or if you're really into it's wallering.
Wallering. Yeah, I tried not to say that, Drew. I tried to bring my language up just slightly and only add 2 additional syllables instead of 4. So, anything else, guys? This has been a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Oh,
Great.
I have one thing. I am in Ormond Beach. I forgot to mention this early. Until February. If we have, it's down around the Daytona area. Email me at info@buddyc.org if you're in this area. Would love to meet some listeners. If anyone's in this area and has the time, and I can meet you somewhere halfway, or if you're close, we can meet for a cup of coffee or whatever. But info@buddyc.org. Actually, I remember one of the first listeners I ever met with was you, Drew, many years ago.
Really?
Yeah, you were
one of the
through.
first.
Yes. And I love that. And I think our relationship has grown from that first conversation. Plus, I got a free meal at the Waffle House, too, which I never would pass on. Yeah, if you guys are in the area, would like to meet, I would love to meet for a cup of coffee. Also, I'll be driving back in February up to North Georgia. So anyone in between, just let me know. info@buddyc.org. If there's nothing else, guys, Y'all have a great week and hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.